Good morning, Crossroads Church. This morning I want to talk about joy. You see, to be a Christian is to be joyful. Joy is a fruit of the Christian life. Have you ever heard the saying, now you see me, now you... You see, that originated from a disappearing trick of a magician. Is that what your joy looks like? Do you have a now you see me, now you don't kind of joy? Well, much like everything else, whether you have joy will be determined by where you get it from. In John chapter 15, verse 11, Jesus says, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full." And then in Nehemiah 8, it says, "For the joy of the Lord is your strength." And Crossroads Church, let me ask you a question this morning. Is the joy of the Lord your strength? I know the joy of the Lord is your strength when it's sunny outside. I know it is when life is good. I know when there's no trouble on the horizon, the joy of the Lord is your strength. But what about when the storm comes? When life isn't going according to plan? When trouble does come your way? When the unexpected thing happens in your life? Is the joy of the Lord your strength then? Because it should be. You see, the joy of the Lord is not situational. It's permanent. It's concrete. And what should set the believer apart from others is the joy that we have in the storm. Is the joy that others see that we have in the storm. And I think what happens a lot of times is we follow Jesus and we expect that the storms are going to go away. But they don't. And what I came to tell you this morning is if you're going to belong to Christ, church, you're not going to avoid the storms of life. You see, Jesus himself went through storms. Storms are going to come, but it doesn't have to steal your joy. Because our joy doesn't come from our situations. Our joy comes from a person, and that person is Jesus Christ. Amen? Your joy doesn't belong to the storm. Your joy belongs in the Lord. You see, I know this because one, I just read it to you and the Bible is true, but two, I've lived it. I've lived it for the last 18 months of my life. You know you're in a good-sized storm when you keep track of the days, amen? And what you need to know, church, is that a storm can ruin you. And the storm I'm in, or I was in, could have ruined me. But it didn't. And I was complimented by many on how well I weathered the storm. But the truth is, it wasn't me, church. The truth is that the joy of the Lord was my strength. And the joy of the Lord was my strength because it enabled me not to focus on the storm. Instead, I focused on what God was going to do in my life because of the storm. You see, while you're in the storm, if you can just look beyond the cloud for long enough to see that the sun is still on the other side, you can have a joy in the toughest season of your life. Because the truth about the storm is, the sun is actually still there. It's just blocked by the storm. And what I'm saying to you, church, is if you can just look beyond your situation and focus on Christ, you can experience and you will experience joy. And what a testimony it is to the people around you when they see you in a storm and yet your light is still shining bright. It begs them to ask the question, how are you handling this so well? And the answer is, well, my joy doesn't belong to anything other than Jesus Christ. So I'm going to be just fine. You see, Jesus showed us a great example of this. Jesus faced the storm of crucifixion. But Jesus wasn't focused on the storm, was he? No, Jesus was focused on what God was going to do because of the storm. And that meant salvation for all of those who believe. That alone, church, should give us enough joy to last in eternity. Amen. This morning, when I think of joy, I think of the song, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room." And that is the answer, church. That's the answer to joy and to all things. First, we have to receive the King.